What's up, everybody?
Woohoo, woohoo.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mindful CEO. Hey, I've got some great feedback on the last two episodes we've done. Last week was the Mindless CEO podcast episode, which I started listening to. Have you started listening to our conversations yet?
I have not. I find it very difficult to listen to myself.
They're so good. We'll have to unpack that another time, but
well, maybe not.
They're really good. I really appreciate where we go in the conversations.
All right, good.
And we're getting external validation. It's not just me thinking that about myself or you. It's like
one of our 3 listeners is
9 out of 10 listeners agree that, our podcast is.
Do we have 10?
No, I'm I make it sounded better. So let's talk about being the CEO of our lives. This is your prompt, but
well, I was I was on a podcast with some other people who do a sort of a wander podcast as well with the prompt, and then just wander and see what shows up. And one of the things that showed up was this idea of being the CEO of your life. She was asking me about my podcast, and it came up like when we had started this, the evolution of this podcast was from realtor specific podcast to, this would apply to anyone who's a business owner. This is a useful kind of inquiry, leadership, legacy, and leverage. Come on, got all 3.
Right away.
It only takes me a year. Are useful concepts for, any business owner.
Yes.
Right. Anyone who's dealing with, having their life make a difference. And then I don't know why it didn't occur to me in the first place, but it's a big conversation in my book, Sell Your Home Like a Boss, is to be the CEO of that transaction. And I think very much what's missing for people is ownership. In real estate, particularly, I see it in my field all the time that people act in a way that's deferring.
Yeah.
Which is the whole feeding into the appification of the real estate process. And, they don't operate as if they frankly just don't operate as if they're the CEO. The place where it really showed up initially was people don't interview agents sufficiently. They hire the first agent they talk to. And as a CEO, you just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
If you were the CEO of a business, you just wouldn't do that. So anyway, so being the CEO as an individual, as a context, has been something I've been talking about for a long time. The book's probably 3-4 years old at this point.
Yeah.
But I didn't make the connection between that and this podcast until Saturday. And I thought that is interesting. Like if it opens this up to a wider audience, when people hear CEO, it's obviously a business term.
Yep.
It's intentionally designed to bring that world up of business.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to be the CEO of your own life? And what are the implications of that? And what would be the advantages? And what are the disadvantages? And what is that an empowering context for you? Is that someplace that if you stood there and you got yourself located as the chief executive officer of your life, what leverage would that give you?
Yeah.
To make a difference in your life. It's a position of leadership for sure, right? You hear CEO, and that is the leader of the company. And what leverage does it give you in your life to be able to locate yourself as that kind of person? So I don't know, I thought that would be a good place to leap into an inquiry about that. So any thoughts about that? Anything you hear about that?
I definitely, you and I have talked in past podcast episodes just about, reframing and context. And for me, it's a weekly occurrence of, I will inevitably wind up somewhere waking up in the morning where I'm not in a state of, I am all that I am. And I am going to, I'm not being mindful. I'm waking up to the to-do list. I'm waking up to whatever. And I think this is similar to that. I think it's when I'm with others in a position of leading something, it's easier for me to wear the identity called I'm the CEO of this project, of this thing I'm doing with other people. But in my own life, it often occurs like I'm trying to catch up to all that life is happening to me, around me. And so the first thing that's coming up is just the context of knowing myself as a CEO, a leader in relationship to other people, but then in relationship to my life, just that's a thing to bring up for me. That's a reframing tool. I am the CEO of my life, and I'm appreciating it in this moment because that's not how I typically think about it. There's a certain what's the word? I don't want to say status, but a certain confidence or a certain posture about thinking of myself as the CEO of my life that I can motivate myself, but it doesn't come with the same swagger that thinking of myself as the CEO of my life might come with.
Yeah.
For me.
It's interesting because as we're talking about it, it's like, okay, if it's easy to get it when you compartmentalize it. I'm the CEO of this project.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the CEO of my business. I'm the CEO of whatever, this podcast, the CEO, right? But here we are in partnership. So even if I look at it like, oh, this is good, because the place where I was having trouble grasping it or the metaphor broke down was in my marriage, right? Like my wife's the CEO. And I say that jokingly, but now I'm really looking at it like it's interesting. I guess because let's see what's there is, the CEO is the director. It's the person who's saying how things are going to go. And I don't, and I suppose a strong CEO is always listening for the constituencies and what's going to make a difference, right? Inside enrollment and what's possible and building something and creating an opportunity for people around me to participate. And that kind of leadership is, kind of leadership that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is the kind of leadership where others show up knowing themselves as leaders, not leader follower kind of conversations.
Yeah.
Like if you don't distinguish that, then CEO becomes sort of a hammer.
Right.
But if you are in the world of leadership as that which empowers other people's natural leadership,
that's good.
Inside that context of leadership, then the CEO becomes the phrase that's there for me is leader of men, like someone who's like creating the opportunity for others to know themselves as bigger than they knew themselves before. And I can get that. It's interesting, because in my marriage, or even in this partnership here, Chris, between you and I,
right.
It's a place to come from, right? Like I'm the CEO of my life, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm in charge of this podcast, right? Like unilaterally, or clearly not my marriage unilaterally. Nothing is unilateral. But I think in the frame of, we talk about, this is always mind blowing to me if I remember back to my forum, right? Is, and I wonder if we still do this in there, but that relationships work when it's 100% zero.
Yeah. Right.
People think relationships work when it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And that's bullshit. It never works when it's 50-50. The only way to get it to work is when it's 100% zero. Like I'm 100% accountable. Otherwise I'll bring the fire if you bring the wood, which is never going to fucking happen.
Right.
Or it's unsustainable. I mean, it might happen, but but there is this element of, no, I'm the CEO of that marriage. Nothing happens in that. Nothing happens. I'm not the CEO of the marriage. I'm the CEO of my life.
Yeah.
And as the CEO of my life, I have my job is to have that relationship. That relationship is my business. That marriage is my business.
Sure.
I'm going to have that fucking thing work.
Yeah. So
right?
the directive.
And it doesn't matter what she's doing. Right. It doesn't matter what she's doing. I'm going to have.
I'm 100% zero, whether she shows up or not. I'm, as a CEO of my life, I'm going to show up in that space 100% zero.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% accountable. 100% accountable. And, and definitely works. What definitely works in my marriage is when my job, when I relate to my job in that marriage is that she's my customer.
Yeah.
My wife is my customer in that context. And my job is to have complete customer satisfaction, to have it be.
That's an interesting reframe. Yeah.
Right. Like that's my job. Oh my God. I had the worst customer experience just this week. Not with my wife, wife.
Okay. Because I mean, you're right on the heels of.
I know. I got to reel that back in. No.
Let's clarify.
Yeah. But I'm just, because customer service is, oh my God, what a bugaboo. I'm so hooked by bad customer service. So hooked by it.
Do you have contempt for it? Can you get all the way to contempt for it?
For bad customer service? I know. I get infuriated. I get so wrapped around the axle of how mindless it is, how just it's so dumb. It's so easy to give good customer service. It's so simple. And I think it's easy. It's simple and easy to give good customer service. There's just no big deal to it. And yet it occurs like, I don't know.
I mean, dude, this is to bring it back to the conversation of the CEO of your life. Like, if you're not used to being the CEO of your life, you wouldn't know how to show up. The level of agency you have for yourself would have a hard. I mean, it would have a hard time for you to show up for somebody else in a certain way that delivers easy customer service. You would have to know yourself as someone a certain way that could do that. I'm wondering if, I don't know. Yeah, whatever.
Well, no, don't whatever. Let's just go back.
There's just so much to unpack in it. It's like, on one hand,
well, we should have a podcast where we unpack it. Oh, we do.
But there's too many. Since you've been sharing, I have like 10 things I want to say.
Hey, let's start with one.
They all go different directions. One is like, I started off saying I can know myself as a CEO with other people, but then how I think of myself is often not maybe in the same standard, but which is sort of the opposite of what I'm saying in this scenario, where somebody giving bad customer service, where they would have to know themselves as somebody, they would have to know themselves a certain way in order to want to show up for somebody else and provide easy and awesome customer service. Like, so it's a little paradoxical, or.
Okay. Let's just unpack that one little segment there, because I don't understand what you're saying and I want to understand what you're saying. So,
okay, good.
Go back to the first part of it, right? Which is.
Well, that one I can say from my lived experience, like that one is true for me, which is, you talked about being a CEO of your own life. I don't often think of myself that way, but I have thought of myself. I do know myself as a CEO, or the what that context carries with it, of projects outside myself with other people. When I'm leading a space, when I'm leading a project, I can relate to myself very effectively as I am 100% zero in this thing. I will be in this partnership. I will be in whatever this project is 100% zero. So I know myself as a CEO with other people.
Yeah, hang on one second. Let's just say 100% zero, just because that may show up as code for people that haven't been in the forum or don't understand what we're saying. 100% zero means I'm 100% responsible. You're 0% responsible. Everything's on me. I'm 100% responsible for this working. You are 0%. So you have no problems doing that in specific guide rails, containers, spaces. But when you look at your life in general, it doesn't show up that way.
Yeah, when it's just me with myself and my own I'm not in a business setting. I'm just,
Mhm.
it's Chris with his health, or it's Chris with his spirituality or whatever. It's much easier for me just to be like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. In other words, there's no one else to be 50% or 100% on their end. It's only me. It's only me, but I'm not 100%. I'm like, depends on the day. I'm 25%. I'm like, maybe I'll work out. Maybe I won't, maybe I'll follow my meal plan. Maybe I won't. I don't know. It's not 100% zero with myself.
That's good. So let's just right there. Let's drill in there for a second, because that then opens up the opportunity for mindfulness.
Yeah, good.
Right. That's what's missing in those occasions is maybe not the only thing is missing, but certainly missing there is some degree of awareness, presence, mindfulness. And we should have a prompt called defining mindfulness at some point, Chris. Right. You want to put that on the list, it would be great. But I could hear it in what you were saying, because my as lived is scrolling, doom scrolling before I get out of bed. Like, okay, just 2 more reels. Okay, 1 more reel. Okay. Okay, I like this. I like this comedian. I mean, like that, but there's no one in charge, right? Like the monkey is in charge. In those cases, right? The monkey mind is in charge. The default, whatever the brain wants, whatever the brain thinks, which is the absence of mindfulness. It's deadening. It's numb. No one's home. I'm not noticing it. I'm not responsible for it. There's no me in charge of that. I think all those things fit inside that. And that's what I think the opportunity for practicing mindfulness, one of the opportunities of practicing mindfulness is to leave you, has the possibility of leaving you in charge. Like what's you, right?
Yeah.
Right. But you as someone who has a, commitment for a legacy. That's the, if we really look at it, like, I hate it when people say, the country doesn't, you need a businessman to run the country, like as if the country needed to turn a profit. Right? Like, the post office loses money. I was like, okay, yes, the post office is, but so does the military.
Yeah. Right.
It's a fucking service. It's not supposed to make money. It's like crazy. So I'm much more left than thinking business is the answer to everything. However, contextually, if you looked at it like, this is good, Chris, because this is about your life's purpose, your legacy, all those conversations. It's in those moments where you're not the CEO that you're not in the presence of the legacy of what you're up to, of your purpose. Right. That purpose could then become the mission of the business. Not a stretch. That's really what we've been talking about for a year, is that your purpose is your business. Your business is your purpose.
Yeah.
And there's that opportunity. But we haven't brought to it the mindfulness of being the CEO of the fulfillment of that purpose. So I'm now relating to my doom scrolling and reeling in the morning, as opposed to getting out of bed at 6. I'm like, well, I could watch 15 more minutes of this and still meditate and get out of bed by 7 and make my call. And as opposed to, is this fulfilling my legacy or is this not? Which is a question the CEO would ask about the resources that the CEO has available to them to fulfill what they're up to.
Yeah. Right.
All a function of keeping that mindful. All right. So I got the first part of what you were saying.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that. But then the second part that you were saying is a paradox. What's the second part that's a paradox to that?
Well, and we were talking about customer service and just having it, getting wrapped around the axle of, people not providing customer service when it's easy and simple. It's, and my thought about that was, I was trying to think about somebody who would not be providing customer service, and who do they know themselves to be? Like, if they're, and the assumption I think I'm making in my head is they're not showing up for themselves. So how could they show up for you? And that's an assumption. That may not be true, but
it's just super meta. But yes, that's the thing about it. Okay, let's just look at this for customer service. The thing that makes me crazy about it is, I know there's a connection here, but I don't know what it is yet. the thing that makes me crazy about bad customer service is it's because the other person on the other end of the phone, or the other person whose business it is that's jacking me up, is operating in a way as if they've never been on my end of the phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're operating as if what they're doing, there's just a mindlessness to it. There is a real lack of humanity in it. It's always the lack of humanity that gets me. It's the real lack of understanding this issue. It, at the very least, needs an authentic acknowledgement for the problem that is at hand, right? That the product or service is not delivering, or is and that human being could just see that if they looked as a human being. But instead they're operating as a, I don't know, as a fucking rule book.
Yeah.
You know, or like you said, they're who they are for themselves. It kills their humanity. It's killing their humanity to not to acknowledge that's happening. So the people on the, the interface level with the consumer, wherever you're lucky enough to get a human being, are generally not empowered to make a difference with it in, poorly run companies that don't care about customer service, don't empower the front lines to be able to make something right. And then the decision in the back, higher up, wherever the bean counters are in that scenario, are intentionally not giving them the authority to make any kind of difference, because they're of the mindset that the human beings that are buying the service don't fucking matter enough. There's enough of them, and they'll always be coming, that we don't have to take care of them in any human kind of way. And that's always the part that gets me, because, you do business with Amazon, and, it couldn't be more faceless.
Yeah.
I mean, just couldn't have a more faceless organization. It's not Nordstrom's where there's an individual there you're talking to. It's a completely faceless organization. But if there's any problem there, every single person you talk to is empowered to resolve it immediately, immediately.
Yeah.
So it's wild. And then just from a profit standpoint, you show me a company that has delivered extraordinary service and gone out of business. Give me the examples of where a company gave too much customer service and it didn't work out for them in the bottom line. You just can't. There aren't examples of this. This is because that's not the way business works. But the bean counters in the tower don't get this. And so it's just maddening. It's absolutely mad. It's maddening because of the way it has people suppress their humanity on the front end, the business that are not empowered. And wild.
Well, that brought up something for me about just if we just bring that back then to the CEO of our own lives. So just it's me, myself, and I. And I think it made me think, as you were sharing that, about how often I give myself good customer service. I don't know that I give myself good customer service. I think I expect a lot from myself, and I don't necessarily interact with myself sometimes in a customer satisfaction context, how, if I could really, in parts work, if I could really separate myself, Carl Jung, if I could really have a conversation with all my parts, and my parts were serving each other, I'm not sure that would be a very, happy conversation. I think everybody would be a little cynical of each other, my parts, the critic and the protector and all the different parts you can think of. The cheerleader, everybody would just be like, hey, this isn't working so well. And so it's an interesting thought. We've talked about imposter syndrome on this podcast, I think multiple times, but there's something about a customer coming in and you're like, hey, you know what? You're an imposter. Hey, you're an idiot. Right. Who are you to buy this? Who are you to show up into this space? That would be not something you would say to a customer. You know, like maybe being the CEO of your life is like, how are you having a good team? And if your team are the parts of you that are all working together 100% zero to pull something off called your life.
It's good. That's great, Chris. I mean, you know, I've certainly had thoughts around that, but not in that frame. And that's a really interesting way to do it. And again, calls for mindfulness.
Yeah.
You know, calls for awareness, presence to, okay, well, what is that conversation I'm having with myself?
Yeah.
You know, is this an empowering context? Am I being, you know, am I allowing myself as to experience, you know, am I allowing myself to experience what there is to experience here? You know, am I just beating myself up? Certainly beating myself up is a phrase that's enough in the culture to communicate this. And, you know, you just wouldn't ever beat up a customer. You just wouldn't ever beat up a customer.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, in some ways when it's negative, and I have that every week. It's not like, you know, I think mindfulness is a state maybe more than it is like a condition. Like I've reached mindfulness, you know, like I am here. I will forever be here. That there's did you say one time it was a skill? Like there is something that can be developed. Your mindfulness can be developed. And so you can get better at it. I definitely think I'm better at it, but it's definitely that active managing of how I'm relating to myself in the context that I hold. So, you know, when you're talking about bean counters who don't think the humanity of the customer is worth investing in, and I take that and I make myself both the bean counter and the customer, you know, like, do I at times relate to myself like I don't matter, or like I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground. Like I don't really know anything. Who am I to do this? You know,
I don't know anything, and who am I to do this? There's a world between those two statements. Those two statements are not inherently linked.
Say them again. Who am I to do this? And what was the other one?
I don't know anything about this.
Oh,
I mean, you could link them. Obviously, you could link them. I linked them today. I told you about the Navy SEAL that I saw doing mindfulness training, and I was like, oh, well, fuck it. This is a terrible idea for us to do this. There's already someone in the space. So linking those two things was right there, but they're not necessarily linked, because there could be, wow, I don't know anything about this. Great. Let me check it out and see what I can learn. I mean, those are equally, yeah, that's be mindfulness. Like, wow. Right. Well, mindfulness could also be, I don't know anything about this. And then how cool. I don't know anything.
Sure. Right. Yeah. That's mindfulness. Yeah.
Right. I'm just check it out. I don't know anything about this.
Well, that's the point. I think maybe that why I said it that way just is that they're different, but if I'm not mindful about it, they overlap a ton. They collapse on each other, and they can feel like one and the same thing. Like, what do I know about mindfulness? I'm not a Navy SEAL.
Right.
You know, who am I to, and then that spills into, so who am I to do it? If I don't know what a Navy SEAL knows about mindfulness, then who am I to do it?
Well, that's the spill. That's the natural cascade, you know, into a disempowering world, which is what we all, you know, that's the default. Yeah. That's where we're all going, right? Into that world of, you know, this isn't going to work and fuck it. And
right.
I'm a dumbass. And
right. Which is, you know, you shouldn't talk to your customer that way.
Right. That's a really great interesting way to put it, right? As a CEO, you're right. Who's the customer? You know, and what's needed here to empower the customer? What did the customer want here? What is the, you know, if I'm the CEO, right, of this project for legacy of people having agency, then, but also now I'm also not just the CEO of that, right? Right. There's aspects of me that I could look at like the customer of that, and like I could empower that. Well, yeah.
The word you used earlier was humanity, and you know that there is in good customer service is humanity. So that the idea of, if you're the CEO of your life, if you're in the C-suite of your life, but you are also the customer of your life, that there is some accounting for the humanity of you, like that. So if I had to say it another way, with the example of like, who are we to do a mindfulness thing when Navy SEALs are out there doing mindfulness stuff, there's a to me, I think of I rarely anymore have imposter syndrome. And I think it's because I somehow I figured out what I want to build and how I want to build it. And I'm not measuring myself against anybody else's way they're doing it. This is a creation. This is my art. I have a life's work and a legacy to build, and nobody else can build it but me, because it's the thing that's in my heart to build. It's a creation. And so there's a humanity from the C-suite down to the person in the trenches, in the front lines of building this thing, that is a real synergistic, like, I see what you're doing on the front lines, Chris. And they go, thanks, Chris, up in the C-suite for supporting us here.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I'm pretty sure it's Matthew McConaughey, during one of his Academy Award acceptance speeches. I don't know if one of them, I don't know if he's won more than one. So could just be the one, but he thanked himself for not giving up and, you know, believing in himself. Like, it was that tenor of exactly what you're saying, of believing in himself. And that's really, you know, I mean, that could come off a lot of different ways. And certainly I read many scathing,
I'm sure,
right? Like the egotistical way of viewing that comment. And at the same time, right, I mean, certainly it's a valid way to look at it, but it's just a really disempowering way to look at it. It's the least generous possible way to look at it, which is really, people looked at it in the least generous possible way. That's shocking. Shocking. I can't believe that social media was less than generous.
Yeah. What?
In this economy? And what I hear really is what you're pointing to, is that there really is, you know, a you that could be nurtured, and fostered and brought along and you know, listened to and developed, and, you know, with a difference, with an ear toward, you know, empowering as that person, as that aspect of ourselves moves toward fulfilling our legacy, you know, or moves the machine, moves the game, moves the piece on the board closer to fulfilling on our legacy. And it is worth acknowledging that part of ourselves. It is worth acknowledging who we are, what we do. And I think developing that CEO mindset is an access to that.
Yeah.
You know, noticing creating that context by default will create divisions in who you are. Like, it'll create, oh, if I'm the CEO of my life, then great. Then who's the chief financial officer here? Right? I should empower that person.
Yeah.
Right? I should really make sure that person has what they need. And who the hell is the chief? Who's my direction? Who's my office? You know, my chief operating officer, right? Who's that person? Right?
Yes.
You know, who's handling the personal chef today? Like, you know, you start to divide up the accountabilities. So it's not, I think, gosh, there's way more than one episode of ideas in this to explore.
It's helpful though, because it gives a framework. You know, it's kind of like, sometimes mindfulness can feel like you're sticking your head into the void, you know, and seeing all the things, but not seeing anything. It's like you're swirling, but this really gives it a structure to kind of be like, it's helpful. It's a helpful framework. I like it.
Yeah. And I like the idea of it giving rise to various accountabilities or various other aspects of ourselves that could be nurtured, that the CEO's job is to bring along, you know, because I know my HR department is out of control.
It's so helpful. I mean, it's such a diagnostic. You like, now I'm like, okay, let's just go, you know, every quarter you could do a quarterly review, and you're like, let's look at our entire organization, you know, which department is like suffering right now, who needs some coaching.
My CFO is
drinking. That is great. I love that. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
HR wants to have a word with me.
Yeah. That is amazing. Wow. I really do like that. I mean, talk about mindfulness, like just bringing all the piece. It makes me think about Conversations with God, how Neil Donald Walsh wrote that book. Carl Jung, like I said, called it parts work, but you can have a conversation with your CFO and your HR person, and you can have, if you journal like Neil Donald Walsh was writing, you as a CEO could call the meeting to attention, and and start to talk to those parts of yourself in a journal format or a computer and type it out. I've done that. It's very helpful. Like, it's interesting the wisdom that comes through when you're starting to hone in on the very specific things, that departments that you want to focus on. And that would be total mindfulness. That's a mindfulness practice.
It is a mindfulness practice. That's very cool, Chris. I like it because it brings distinction to what I'm dealing with. Like, I'd like to play with it for a week or so and then come back and have, I think we're still fleshing out the conversation for the new brand and where we're at and what it means to be the mindful CEO. And what that, love to hear from any listeners about what you've noticed or what you start to notice if you start to divide up the accountabilities of your life from, because otherwise it's in one big bucket. And I find it difficult to imagine life's not just happening to you.
Yeah. Right.
If you're not the CEO of your life, then the other side of that equation is life's just happening to you and you're living in some sort of reactive mode to everything that's happening, or you're maybe not even reactive mode as much as is like at the mercy of life, what's happening. If you're not the CEO, what are you? Right.
Yeah.
Right. What are you to your life?
That's a good journal prompt. Somebody could write that. Yeah.
Right. Like, if you're not going to be the CEO, what are you? In a lot of ways, it's just, first of all, there's no mindfulness there. There's just what you are. I'm just a guy, which means you're just at the whim of life. Really, I think if you drill down into that, that means you're just doing whatever shows up.
Right.
And that really does fit right inside legacy, leverage, and leadership. Like, if you're going to provide leadership, right, that's the CEO's job. That's the CEO's visionary. That's the position of that person. More than the chairman of the board, right? The chairman of the board may have ultimate, forget about, I'm not interested in getting the metaphor that deep. Sorry, I went there.
It's
a little too in the weeds. But that's the leadership role and then the legacy portion is your purpose, is what you're up to and what are you out to fulfill. Or if you're still listening from your actual business's purpose, then that's what your business is out to fulfill in the world. And then, what are that opportunity to leverage various assets. And if you're, again, this is all personal stuff. If my wife, I have, I don't know if it's not diagnosed, and I don't want to insult anyone who is diagnosed OCD, and I'm certainly not out to, trivialize what that is in any way. But had an experience last weekend where I used what I call my OCD, my anxiety, for the good of the group. It's like we went to see The Dead at the Gorge, and we were at a campground, and I took the first bus over to the gorge and got us everyone's seats. Which meant I sat, got there at 3:30 and I stood in line for an hour, and then I got inside at 5 and waited till the show to start 7, and everyone just shows up at 7 and they all have space on the blanket, right? Which was fine. It wasn't a hardship for me, because if I was anywhere else, I would have been really anxious about I would not have enjoyed myself anywhere else. And I didn't need anyone else to come with me, because the thought of spending 2 hours making small talk with someone is anxiety producing in and of itself. So but it was like, I'm going to use my OCD for good, right? I'm not going to just sit here and be anxious. I'm going to go do something about it. And my wife and I were joking, it'd be nice if one of us had a cleaning OCD, like something that would be really useful for the family, right? But we don't, right? So in terms of the performance review, or if you start looking, right, whoever's accountable for maintenance, the building maintenance is shitty. I have a very shitty facilities manager. Very weak at facilities management. And but that then becomes a framework to be able to work something out and be responsible for that, and understand that and guide that person and hire someone. We always talk about, farm out things you're not good at, but now you've got a real framework in which to sort that out. I think it's super empowering. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah. Me too.
Really, it's way deeper well than I thought it was going to be.
It's the power of mumbling through it. Cause I really like the metaphor analogy. I don't know what you call this, but the framework, I like it. It helps me think a lot about how I would relate to myself because I think in business or in projects that are external, I can be task oriented. I can move something forward. I'm good at measuring it or breaking it down into chunks. When I get into my own life, like I said, it's harder to really think through what are the compartments of it. It kind of all blends together, and it creates a little bit of confusion for me at times. So this feels helpful to me because I can create some order in a place that sometimes feels chaotic,
Yeah.
That's
good. I think, and it's directly connected to mindfulness in that way.
Yeah.
It's noticing it. All right. Well, I think we could wrap this here, and I would love to hear from anyone listening, just where where do you see your weak constituencies are within yourself, or where do you, just anything you got out of this conversation, really opening this conversation for prompts. Where, if there's a place you want to see us go next, or a question you have, something that we could talk about, we're totally open for that. You can just email us or contact us off the webpage, or
wherever you.
Our show notes have our email addresses and stuff.
Well, I keep my email address very private. I don't like, in a world of spam, I don't put mine out there very. But
okay, how do people get a hold of us if they want to get a hold of us?
Well, depending on where you're watching this, or listening to this, I suppose, just go to our Facebook group. I mean, just go there. You can.
Okay, fine. Mindful CEO. Great, perfect.
Yeah, because you can find, and then you can find our profiles from there. Look, I mean, be mindful about if you have something to say, like, let's connect.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Great.
Yeah, and obviously the website is themindfulceo.com. So you can head over there and check out all the other things there, including the community that'll launch at some point here. So
we have a contact us on the website.
I haven't added that. I should add that.
We'll just add that. Okay, good. There you go. So now we've handled that. Okay.
we're even mumbling through our administrative things right here on the show.
All right, good. So there'll be a little contact us, which you can just submit a prompt if you're interested in us, exploring an idea that you have a question or something. We'd love to explore that. Because we do not have the answers, but we will find them.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, friend. Thank you. Good stuff today. See you next time.